What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Bryce Crawford podcast. I'm Bryce, and today, a very special guest. I'm super excited about this episode. Got Pastor Carl Lentz with us today. How are you doing?
So excited to be here, bro.
Let's go.
You're awesome. It's so cool just to even be around people that are as genuine and faith-filled as you, because unfortunately, it feels like it's kind of rare. So just to be able to see you from far and meet you, man, it's already really encouraging. Can you cover up your tattoos before we finish? Because I don't feel like God can move in an environment with visible tattoos.
Really?
No, I'm joking.
Yeah,
but I
I'm
definitely
like,
got, even the dog knew I was joking.
He was barking. No.
You looked at me so sincerely, like, oh my gosh, no.
I'm gonna cover
you
him
have amazing work. I love it.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm super excited. I want to first, I want to talk about your story, but I don't want that to be the highlight of the podcast because I feel like, and I just want to hear from your perspective because there's so much stuff out there, but I don't want that to be the main point because I feel like it's everything that people always ask you, and there's more to you than that. You know, there's like, I don't know. When I look in today's society, I feel like just with anything in general, when Jesus says like, love your neighbor as yourself, nowadays across the board, I feel like I'm always asking, where's our neighbor? Like we just never care about our neighbor. We never love them. We just can't look past the things that people have done. And then like, even before that, like I'm reading scripture this morning in Luke 6, and he's talking like, yeah, like, you know, you guys want to return evil for evil. You guys want to judge people. And with that, when you got a log in your own eye, and I'm just like, man, what are we doing? Like, there's more to us than just the faults we've done. Like, if people looked at me for everything I'd done wrong, then I don't know. Like, I wouldn't be sitting here, you know? But I think there's a lot of cool. I've been so encouraged by you for years.
Thank you, brother.
I've been listening to you for a long time. I became a Christian when I was 17. And when I was 17, I was listening to a lot of you. I was listening to, I read this book. I remember when I first became a Christian, I read this book called Systematic Theology by Wayne Grudem. I became a Christian on Christmas Day. And then I listened to some sermons that you preached at Hillsong. And I listened to, I'm forgetting the last name right now. I'm blanking right now. Who was I listening to?
Throw out some names. T.D. Jakes.
T.D. Jakes. No, I wasn't listening. Francis Chan. Francis Chan.
I was going to go like with the spectrum. So
there's like so many different.
John Piper. Yeah, just kidding.
But I was listening to you, Francis Chan, and reading the same book, Systematic Theology, and I was super encouraged. But I want to go back to like when you were, I heard a little bit of your story, but where'd you grow up?
Yeah.
Did you grow up in the church? How long have you been a Christian following the Lord?
Yeah, I feel like I've been a Christian as long as I can remember, in that my family's amazing. So my mom and dad live in Virginia Beach, where I'm kind of born and raised, and Virginia Beach, Virginia. Shout out to everybody on the East Coast. And my parents, they really love Jesus. So over the years, you know, my journey looked like trying to figure out my place in church. We went to a church when I was in high school that I didn't connect with, and that kind of began my journey of trying to figure it out for myself. And so high school wasn't really a time where I think, following Jesus like I know is possible. And I always knew that too. I always was conflicted. And then I ended up going to college at North Carolina State in Raleigh, North Carolina, played basketball there. And I loved it. I had achieved and realized a dream that was way out of my depth. Like I was not good enough to be there, but I worked really hard, and teams always can use that. So I was able to find myself in a position where, you know, my eyes opened. And in that moment in college, it was like a really rough night. It was my sophomore year, and I was at a party, and some really bad things were going down at this party. And I remember distinctly feeling, if I participate in this, I might lose my soul. Like I don't know if I can ever, because at this point I'm still kind of like, I'm trying to do the right thing, and, you know, and falling on my face all the time, and just kind of just had God adjacent views. And I just remember going, I can't do this. And I left that party, went home, and my parents took me to a church in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And a guy named Steve Kelly was preaching, who's still there. And I'd never heard the gospel presented in that way at the end. And I've heard the gospel a lot, but the way that he did it just compelled me to go, I want to make a decision to change my life and do this. And I did. I raised my hand, walked up to that altar, and it began significant changes. And I went back to NC State and realized I can't be here. Like, I'm not going to make it if I stay. I want to begin this new journey. went home, and then ended up going to my dad. Hey, I want to go study the Bible because I'm like you. I'm a theology nerd, and I was like, I want to figure this out for myself, because if I'm going to commit my life to this Bible that I don't really believe is necessarily at this point all true, I want to see this for myself. And that began my discovery journey of just trying to figure out what this faith is for me. Come out here to California to Church on the Way, which at the time had a really cool seminary. It might still be going, called King's College. And started my little Bible college journey and got a job here in LA, worked at Gucci, Rodeo Drive. I lived in a house in Van Nuys and took my little Honda Shadow motorcycle through Laurel Canyon to Rodeo Drive every day. And so my first real experience as a Christian was working with all gay people. I didn't even know that, most Christians don't have access or contact with people that don't believe like them at this point. I'm 20. Yeah. I'm like, if you're breathing and moving, you're a candidate for this good news. Yeah. So I loved it. So that's why I learned quickly on my feet how to explain what I believe to people that were already like, oh, here's this young Christian dude. I'm like, hey, I don't know why you feel like that, but this is what I know. And so all of my initial relationships were with people really far from God in their mind. And then I heard about Hillsong and ended up going over there to go to a conference and check it out. Loved it, and then went back and stayed for 4 years and met my best friends there, met my wife there, kind of felt compelled to continue to look at ministry as something that could be for my life. And left Hillsong, went back to Virginia Beach. We did young adult ministry for 7-8 years there. Took a tiny little thing to something that became really awesome. And that's when we started realizing, there's something special about all of us. Like, you have a special call. Everybody listening has a special call. And once you give that to God, it's amazing what can happen with it. And we realize that about us. Like, we have, we're not like supernaturally gifted or anointed, but we're like everybody. If we plant our feet, God will bless us, use us. And so we started seeing that in Virginia. And then at that time, Joel Houston, who's a phenomenal songwriter, he said, meet me in New York. I'm up here doing some stuff. And I met him up there, and he was like, my dad wants to do a church in America. And I'm like, where? He's like, he wants to do it here in New York. And I was like, well, nobody else should do that but me and you, because we know so much. We're both like, early 30s. And but we were genuinely like, man, that's a once in a lifetime shot. Let's go to the city of church graveyards, where apparently nobody wants any piece of this, and let's give it a shot. And so we took our little family, we moved to Brooklyn, New York, and started pastoring Hillsong, New York City. And as it grew, our life changed a lot, as it does with kids. And I loved it all. I loved being a part of it. I love what God was doing. We saw hundreds of thousands of people get saved, hundreds of thousands every year. Like, it's a real move of God. And throughout that time, I had some stuff that was broken in me, and I didn't know what I know today, which is, if there is a crack in your armor, if there is a hidden habit or struggle that you face, and you don't bring it out for somebody to help you wade through, it's not going to go anywhere. Wow. So I got, saved, and I had a crazy past. Not crazy. I think I live like a lot of young guys do who don't know Jesus. You like girls, you have sex when you can, and you party. And what that does, what you don't realize, is as you step into a new phase of life, Jesus forgives you, saves you, cleanses you, empowers you. And the consequence of your sin, eternity is off the table, but you still have to pay for what you did to a degree. So for instance, if you had a lot of sex, you're going to have to fix some of your wiring. You're going to have to retrain your mind. You're going to have to get specific help for that. In that time, decades ago, we weren't looking at stuff like that. And so I just kind of trucked through. And, when I found myself in New York at the end of our time there, I was in trouble. I was broken, and I was hurting, and I was really, really, really scared. And God graciously saved my life again. Wow. And some people can call it an explosion, a scandal, a fall from grace, whatever they want to do. Nobody matters when it comes to your story except for you. Right. That's one thing I've learned in this. Like, I get to frame my own story. So you can call it what you want, but you don't live my life. Right. So my story about my life is that God saved me again. And had he not done that, I definitely wouldn't be sitting in Van Nuys with you today. Right. With a smile on my face and a family at home that is together and health in my mind. So it's been a journey, bro. And I some of the pain I didn't have to go through, but I did. And what you find is that God can use it all.
Absolutely.
All of it. So to spend any time looking back in regret, it's the most fruitless human emotion we have is regret. So I don't look back. There are times I look back and I can feel sad, but I'm able to frame it correctly again, which is, thank God I learned. And there's going to be stuff that's always going to be sad. That's the thing about decisions. But overall, I look at the collective story that God's helping me write about my life. And, it's been an exciting journey.
Wow. Well, I think you hit something nail on the head. I feel like a lot of people are more tolerant with their own sin than than other people.
Well
you know,
said.
it's like people go through the same things. Like Satan's got no new tricks. There's so many people that deal with all across the board the same stuff, and it's like we want to throw shame and condemnation on people when like behind closed doors we're like hurting it ourselves. And so like what you're saying, how people frame you, they're like, I can call it a scandal, explosion, or whatever. Like, and my perspective, like, I'm like, that's my brother. And like, I love him. Like, that's my brother. Like, and I love him. And where's our neighbor when we need him? But like, oftentimes people are just more worried about their perception of themselves. Yeah. And I'm even more encouraged by just, I mean, today, your family, even stronger than before.
Yeah, for sure.
And you guys are just, I can't even imagine. I want to dive into that, what that looks like. But for a second, I mean, you guys, when you guys started Hillsong in New York, I mean, when I think about like making like a digital mark of ministry, I mean, you guys were some of the first. I mean, putting the worship sets online on YouTube, putting the sermons on there. Like there's like a select few churches that I could say, wow, you guys really had a digital impact. But you guys were really reaching hundreds of thousands of lives.
Yeah, well, we at that time, man, like Instagram had just kind of started being Instagram, and we didn't have a whole lot of money to market anything. So we were just like, we're just gonna do this super hood style. we're gonna use Instagram, and we're gonna get the word out, on the streets. And so it was a cool time to just use what we had at hand. But yeah, it ended up becoming a lot of the stuff that we were doing. A lot of people kind of followed and copied and used as a mold. And in some ways, it was great. Because you don't need, you're a great example of that too. If you have the right stuff here, God will find a way to amplify it. And but yeah, man, it was a cool time. I think you're really kind and mature for, how old are you?
21.
So yeah, to look at somebody and say, I see you as my brother. I think what you find as you get older on this journey, a couple things. One, people's response to your story says more about them than you sometimes. So if you have a story and your reaction is horror, it's like interesting. So if I'm settled in my soul and I'm filled with grace and, I'm steady on my own 2 feet, you can tell me something today. Hopefully my reaction would show where I'm at, which is, man, I'm here for you. You're not going to scare me. I'm not going to run from you. It's not going to, but for me to be, appalled and to shun and to judge, we've learned that often those people are hiding very similar stuff they're pointing out in your life, and then two, they just haven't dealt with it. And why would my story create this in you? It's a question for that person. So I think it's a very interesting thing you find. For me, it does need to be said, because I'm a pastor, the standard is higher,
right?
And there is healthy accountability that when somebody who has my platform, for me to make the mistakes I did, I need to be held accountable, and I was. That's not what we're referring to. We're kind of looking at the underbelly of what can become judgment. But if you have a big stage and profile, it comes with it. So I wasn't surprised. As our platform grew, I knew, the people who are around and the people that love you, it can turn on a dime. And that happened in some regard. So I went from being somebody who a lot of people loved to somebody who was really easy to throw stones at. And I put myself in that position. Yeah. And that's the way it works.
Well, did you feel like a lot of pressure? I guess I'm not necessarily saying like, oh, I have a platform, so I've got to, stay like, what you're saying a lot of people do, like hide it. I mean, more so just in general from people, like to deliver to people, like as Hillsong's growing, you guys are like accessing Instagram, YouTube at a very, like no one's really doing it. Everything's growing. Did you feel like a pressure from people to like be there for them? Because I feel like whenever you're in a position of authority, people are always grabbing at you. They're always grabbing at you, and it's just like, how did you navigate the pressure to stay in your lane and still have intimacy with Jesus despite people grabbing you on a rise?
I mean, it's a journey. You learn how to manage it. I think, I mean, what we know now about mental health is so huge for ministers, for pastors. It's part of my passion moving forward, is to make sure that, guys who are behind me, even age-wise, and even guys who are my age and beyond, there's still some of these principles, but learning how to create boundaries, learning how to protect yourself, learning how to not be a codependent Christian leader, because codependency can be a real weakness. It's when you try to manage other people's expectations and control their emotions. It's really close to empathy and kindness. So empathy and kindness, if you don't know how to regulate it, turns into major codependence, where you end up trying to please everybody all the time. And I really struggle with that. I think when you're a young pastor, you just want everybody to relax and chill. It's like, and in a church that gets bigger, the number of people who are unhappy gets bigger. And if you don't have your mind set on what that means, it can throw you. And for me, that was an area I didn't really prepare for. So I felt often like I was not doing a good enough job for somebody every day. So you have a great Sunday and there'd be one person, hey, I had a bad experience with this volunteer. Okay. And there'd be another person, hey, we don't have anything for young moms in the Bronx. Yeah, we don't. That sucks. Hey, we need to have a youth ministry that meets in every borough. Yeah, probably, the list goes on. And if you don't know how to frame it right, that stuff will eat away at you, because that's also part of the job, is managing that. So pressure is the wrong word. I think pressure comes from when you kind of don't understand where the power comes from. I've never mistaken that. It's like, as a minister, quickly, oh my gosh, this is all God using broken people. I do not have the ability to communicate a perfect sermon about a perfect God and a perfect gospel being imperfect. I don't have the goods. And then you watch God show up time and time again, and you start realizing, well, thank God, I'm gonna check that one off. This ain't on me, because I'm not good enough. So pressure, I never felt. I started to feel pressure to manage things, and I started to do it internally, and that was kind of the beginning of the end of that chapter for me. And just didn't share that pressure and that burden.
Wow. Well, I feel like I can relate to that, because I feel like whenever I try to white knuckle my life, like I'm like everything crumbles like 10 times faster.
Yeah.
And then there were even times like where, for me, like I felt like because I kind of was like you, like I got set on fire for Jesus, and I immediately jumped into like telling everybody about Jesus. Oh yeah. Like I was like right in there, and I felt like as I was growing, like I was seeing so many things, great things that are amazing, people coming to know Jesus or reaching people, and it was great. But then having family struggles of my own at home, it felt like that the one cookie I didn't want to crumble was crumbling. And then I would go and I would try to white knuckle it and fix it myself, and I would make it 10 times worse. Yeah. Because I was like trying to do it out of my own strength. And kind of what you were saying, micromanage it in my heart. So when you talk about the end of the period at Hillsong, what, like, I don't want to like highlight it too much, but
you can talk about it any which way you want, my brother. It's whatever helps.
What happened exactly? And then I want to know like what it was like for your wife and your kids, and just understanding what it looked like, the healing process for you guys. Yeah.
Bryce, you're a great question asker. Also, need to take a moment to just talk about how great your shirt is.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. Solid. I got to get you one.
I mean, if I summed up what happened, I think when I got caught in a life and pattern that became really clear quickly, it began a domino effect. Meaning, if you get caught lying, it's fair to go, what else is this guy lying about? Yeah. And then you start looking around and say, who does this guy know? And are they guilty of the same? And then this ripple effect goes, and everybody starts running for cover. So you find out that some Christians love to preach and talk about the hard times, but we don't love to live in them. You find that out. Hopefully you'll never find that out from the wrong angle. But by and large, man, people, they run from problems. They run from things that are ugly. And my situation was very, very ugly. So it just began a slow breakdown. I mean, if people want to know what happened, there was infidelity in my marriage, and I got caught, and it was a chance for me to really get clean and get honest. So it's like, And even though parts of what we're told were very false, to fight some of those details would be so stupid. Like, who wants to be the guy who's like, no, it wasn't on Tuesday, it was Wednesday. It's like, dude, we're talking about robbing a bank. Who cares what day it's on, right? Like, that's what it was like for me to have to learn how to accept the decisions that I made, put me in a position to have a lot of things be said. But if people want to know what really happened at Hillsong, New York City, human leaders, and are there aspects of the way that church is done that needs to be assessed and changed? For sure. That should happen anyway. But it wasn't as complicated and spectacular as some people tried to make it out. It just wasn't. And it was too juicy of a story for people to not just let it be what it is, which is I had some serious issues in my life. And when you're a leader, they're going to come get you at some point. And that's what happened to me. And then, it exposed more about the greater Hillsong movement in a bunch of different ways and just started a ripple effect. But that's, the effect on my family was the hardest part of all this, because they had nothing to do with my sin and my choices. And that's what you find with sin, bro. It's less about you and more about the impact it has on other people across the board. Yeah, it affects you, but what we fail to realize sometimes is we're so selfish when it comes to the stuff we're dealing. I'm sinning and it's making me feel like this, and God's mad. It's like, and your sin impacts other people. So for me to have to see that in living color with my own kids, man, it was not easy. It was not easy. It's something that, for a while I didn't think I could get through. But my wife gave me a chance to figure out if I could fix some of the things that we now knew were broken. Mm-hmm. It's one thing to know you're not well. It's another thing to go to a doctor and say, here's what you have. Now, have you ever had one of those moments where you just feel kind of sick? You're like, I don't know what it is, but I feel something coming on. And it's like kind of unsettling, because you're like, I don't know if it's pneumonia, could be a cold. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it feels like when you get real good help. Like when you go, I went to a rehab and I went to a counseling place, and to be able to have someone dial this in, and I was able to tell Laura, like, the rest of my life, I'll earn her trust back. It's an everyday thing. But if you'll give me a chance, I'd like to show and prove. My words mean nothing. They still matter. I still need to say I'm sorry. I still need to say that these 5 things. And I realize my words have no weight, none. My decisions took the weight out of my words. And if you'll give me a chance to give them depth and meaning again, I will prove to you that God can change anybody's life. And so she gave me a chance to do that, and she graded me in segments. It was like people get a wrong idea about what that can look like. And my wife was never like, it's okay, I forgive you. She didn't forgive me really verbally for 2.5 years. But we had a plan, and there would be some check marks and some road marks about how she felt about my life. And over time you string those together, and you have what we have now, which is like the best second marriage I could ever want. We just stopped trying to make the first one work. It did not go well. It ended. And we started a second marriage. And, we're doing it different this time. And it feels really good. So it's the impact on them highlighted some tough things about the church culture. For my wife to be, abandoned like she was, and for my kids to, have to go through the hurt they did. It probably didn't have to happen like that. There are some churches that do it different now because of that. And that's cool. But yeah, we have a Christian community sometimes that can run from people who need you the most when you need them the most. Yeah. And I'm grateful that wasn't totally the case with me. We had some people that did stick around and help us out, and that's why I'm sitting here today.
Wow. That's so encouraging. I was so encouraged when you said that. You said when I got caught, it was a chance for me to get honest. And I know, like, when I reflect on my own life, like, there are so many times that I'm like, where I feel like if I get caught, I'm in too deep.
Right.
Like, I got to keep digging and digging and digging. And I feel like that's just the honest train of thought. And I'm so encouraged that that's your first reaction. Like, it's just a chance for me to get the clean slate. And I'm also so encouraged by you not even trying to fix the tiny details. Like, you're just letting people throw shots at you and your family. And you're just like, yeah, I did it. Now it's time for me to heal, and time for me and my family to heal.
Well, you can't defend and heal at the same time. Doesn't work. So if you ever find yourself in a position where it's like, well, what's the bigger priority? Is it me coming out and doing an interview right away to make sure everybody knows who else was wrong? And everybody who's lying about me, let me make sure everybody knows about them? Or is the priority to fix my life? What matters more, my healing or my reputation?
Wow.
Well, my reputation was gone, and I did that, and I wasn't going to fix it by like pointing out a liar. And so I just, by the grace of God, Bryce, was able to just freaking harness that. I am shutting it down. I am shutting this whole world is done to me. They can write movies. They can make documentaries. People can do their weird little bloggy thingies that they do. They can do your thing. I've got business to handle. Yeah. And it's my life. It's my relationship with Jesus. And it is to save my family. And everything else can burn. And that's exactly the approach we took. And some days were easier than others to do that. It wasn't like this easy road, but by and large, we were really able to hold on to that frame, man, and it helped us heal.
Wow. I want to talk about like just redemption, like the just redemption from sin, because I feel like when people are in that place of it's come to light, and I even do this with myself. Like I beat myself up so much, and I can't get out of my own head sometimes. Like I'm my own worst enemy, and I show myself no grace.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I think I put a pressure on myself. Like I feel like sometimes, like I'm 21, like I'm just a kid, but I feel like so many people are looking at me and there's like swords pointing at me. And I'm just 21. Like I'm just trying to learn, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
How do you learn to sit in God's grace when something comes to light like that? How are you able to sit in that and not let shame and condemnation creep in? Because I think that's such a hard. I feel like I struggle with that so much. I'll go to my brothers, my friends, my roommates, and be like, hey, I messed up here in this area of my life, and even after I tell them and they come around me and show me that love and grace, like I'll be alone in my room. And I can't show myself the same grace that they're extending me. And it's like, I can't get past that sometimes,
Yeah. It unfortunately, and sometimes it's good to remember as Christians, like, don't forget the guy that we serve was murdered for being perfect. It's like, it's always a good perspective piece. Like, oh yeah, because we have this vision, like we're preaching the good news, we're helping people, we're doing good, serving God. Why do some people hate us? Oh yeah, Jesus was murdered without cause. That's our call. So it's going to happen. And when it comes to grace, the way that you just set up how you feel about yourself, I think I relate to all of it, bro. I was so good at giving grace to other people and teaching other people about grace. But it was just me and myself and my sin and my weakness and my life. In Jesus, I was bad at making that connection. And I think a lot of people struggle with this. So it's probably why God has a spotlight on you, because you can help people find a better way. Like I think when you think about grace, why would it be hard for somebody to forgive themselves and move on? So let's just say you had a bad night last night and you hate it, and you've prayed, you've asked God to forgive you, and you get up and try to live. Why would it be hard? What are you kicking around? Just genuinely asking, and I'll be able to maybe point to some of it, but like walk me through what the hangups are, right? So you have a bad night, you go through that thing again, you fall on your face, you've repented, you've changed your mind about it, done what God said to do, and you still struggle with that hangs over your head. I think a lot of people feel like that. So for you, what do you think it might be?
Yeah, I think like one of the main things I struggle with is like the people, like particularly my family, like my parents. Man, my parents and my brother, they know how to push my buttons. Like, you know what I mean? They know how to push my buttons. And people always say like, oh, I love how gracious you are to people when you talk to them in the street. You're so kind. You're so awesome to them. And that's what people will say. And then I'll go home and they just push that button. They push it. And I get frustrated or angry, or upset, or I feel like that they're not listening to me and this and that, blah, blah, blah. And something that God has been using me to do lately is be the bridge for my family and like just be like a stronghold for my family. And I feel like when I do that, I'm not that person for them. And then on the backside of that, from the perspective of other people, they say, oh, look at how awesome and kind you are to people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't even be gracious to my own family right now.
Right. And
I'm not going to put the excuse that they know how to push my buttons.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to label that. And so I'll go home, and even it could be like I just got back. It's been maybe 5 days from being home. And the night before I left, like, my mom and I got frustrated at my mom.
Yeah.
Because I felt like she wasn't listening to me. And I still think about it.
Yeah, man, thank you for being vulnerable. I think I'm hearing a very human story right now. So all I heard you say was you're a human being. Like, if you look at it from one perspective, it's like, so let me get this straight. Even the way you framed it, like, and I can't even give grace to, like, what if that's not true? What if you're learning how to give grace? And sometimes when it comes to families, it's the hardest thing to navigate out of everything, and you're doing a really good job as you learn. Is that equally true?
I would agree.
Yeah. One of those thoughts is resourceful. I can't even give grace to my family. I'm crappy. Or I'm learning as I go, and I'm aware that family can be really tricky, and I cannot wait to watch God lead me through this and figure it out. Both these things are true. You got to choose which one is going to be true for you today. And I think when it comes to grace, right off the bat, I always know where somebody's at quickly with how they respond to their own sin. I've been a pastor for a long time, so you see it all. And I can always tell people who really have a different revelation of Jesus because they're very cognizant of what they do right and wrong, but it's the posture. The posture is, I'm already in. So I like using the words for and from. Like, do you pray for God's approval, or do you pray from it? Are you doing good so that God will love you more? Or are you doing good because he already loves you so much you can't change it? Are you going to reach people so that God will be happy with you? Or are you going to reach people because God already reached you? The posture is so different. So even with grace, it's like, okay, I've fallen on my face. What would be the fear? Like, did God change his mind about you because of your sin?
Yeah, I think that would be the number one fear. Like, almost like he would be tired of me, like I just keep screwing up.
Right. And so for someone who has theological depth at a young age, your brain will be fighting you on that right away because you know that can't be true, because that wouldn't be the same God that saved you. So the very same grace that accepts you as the broken messes that we are, does this suddenly shift now that we're on this side of salvation? This wouldn't make any sense. But that's the way you think with the way Christians live. So we are so ready to come to Jesus with all of our baggage at first. Oh, God loves me as I am. And it's almost like when we get saved, now we're on a tryout. Why are we trying to get it together now? It's like, man, God saved me, but man, I've been a Christian for 3 years. Shouldn't I be over some of this stuff? Oh, okay, let me get this straight. So God accepted you as you were at the cross. But now that you're in, hey, time to shape up. Come on, man. Like, clock is ticking. You got about 2 more fails before you are off the Christian team. That's not from heaven. And that's the furthest thing from Jesus. That's not how he led. That's not how he lived. And that's not what we have evidence of. So how could a whole generation be stricken with bad grace theology that makes you feel worse every day? That's how you know it's not from heaven. Like, when it's a godly conviction to get right, there isn't condemnation in it. It's a conviction to say, thank God I'm going to change. Like, I had a disagreement with my wife, and we've learned how to frame it. This is this morning, like a couple hours ago. Let's frame this correctly. What a great opportunity to get to know you better. I don't love my response earlier this morning, so I'm sorry for what I said. I could use a different phrase. Man, thank God we're here. It's a frame. It's completely different. Rather than we're going backwards. We're never going to get this right. Now God gave me all this second opportunity, and I'm messing it up. And like, people really think like that. I have been blessed with correct teaching early about what grace is. So I've never, there are days, we all struggle with feeling condemned, but for you or anybody watching that constantly feels that, there's a fundamental thing that you get to go look at and explore and find freedom in. Because if you are saved and God has forgiven you and called you and equipped you, if you're spending a lot of time feeling bad about yourself, something's wrong, and you are in line for some beautiful freedom. Wow. Because the first thing the gospel should do is change your life. Yours, mine. So that means everything I'm trying to get other people to do, I have to do it here first. So if I'm going to speak kindly, hey man, you should speak kindly to yourself. Well, it's got to start here first. We forget about us a lot, and we think that's noble. Christianity is not about you. It's absolutely about you. Are you kidding me? God saved you, so it's about you. So what are you doing here first? So for me, it's like I want to wake up in the morning and say, hey, good to see you, man of God. You are saved, equipped, forgiven, positive, healthy, healing, hopeful. You're going to have a great day. God is with you. You're doing better than you think you are. Ephesians 3:20 matters for you, Carl, in the mirror. Every day is a new day. His mercies are new every morning. How on earth am I going to go tell somebody else that if I've skipped me?
Wow.
It doesn't make any sense. It weakens what I'm actually saying. So I've had to relearn that in this chapter of my life, and I will never unlearn it because that's everything. So when you feel unkind to yourself, you immediately know this is not from heaven. And you can hear some weird preacher online right now if you want, telling you should feel like that. They don't know God's grace. They don't know it. So you just got to be careful in this day and age that you don't plug into the wrong matrix, because before you know it, you've watched an algorithm filled with people who don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
And now you've inherited that. Man, maybe I should feel harder and harsher on myself. If I was really a Christian, I'd feel the condemn. Like, what are we talking about? It's the good news for a reason. So I like the idea of you handling your struggles with more grace first.
Yeah.
It's not like God's like, hey guys, you see Bryce down there? He's doing it again. I thought we had like a legion of angels that were supposed to surround him. How could he be doing? I think the posture of heaven when we struggle is one of, this is going to be a beautiful thing to grow through. And we have biblical evidence of that. That's how God operates. So you will never see anybody go through a trial, and not have an opportunity for God to redeem it.
So what does healthy grace and accountability look like then, I guess, when you're navigating through problems? Like how do you have a healthy, like, okay, there's a problem.
Yeah.
I need to hit this on the head.
Yes.
But also be kind to yourself.
Yeah. Exactly that. That's the process. So I have an issue. Let's say I have, let's take something that's common. Someone has a pornography habit and addiction. So the first thing you do is say, thank God I'm equipped to get through this and not let this steal any of my joy or any of my peace. I immediately need to involve somebody else. And accountability is wildly overrated if the person lies to themselves. Accountability is only as good as I'm honest. So I can meet with you every morning, like, I'm accountable, had pure thoughts last night, haven't looked at my computer, but I'm lying to myself. This is a waste of time.
Right.
I've already been honest with myself. I've already been honest with God. So now I can sit across from you and say, all right, Bryce, here's the truth. This week had some huge misses in this area, and here's what I'm going to do about it. What do you see? How can you help me? Let's go with this plan. It's a plan of attack. It's not a plan of surrender. And I think that there's a lot to that. So for me, if you find something in your life, I immediately flip it. So if someone's like, I really struggle with negative thoughts. Okay, cool. From this second on, let's think about how beautiful our mind is and how much power God's given us to renew our mind. Let's never think of it like that again. I struggle with bad thoughts. Okay, well, that entire strain of thinking will be defeated just like that. You'll be defeated. You'll be, somebody who's kind of down a lot. But if you immediately switch it and go, I have the power, Bryce, to think clear. And that's what I'm going to fight for. Here's how I'm going to do it. Negative thoughts doesn't even get in the sentence. Doesn't even get in your paragraph. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of, I think, the essence of our faith is here. We look at kind of the actions of it and kind of what happens outside, and that's important. But Jesus was always looking at people's brains. Yeah. Always. And that's what, even the essence of salvation is a brain move.
Whoa.
Repent. Yeah. That's a brain decision. Romans 12, renew your mind. That's a brain decision. This is before helping people. This is before helping the needy. This is before evangelism. Renew your mind. Do not be conformed to the patterns of this world. Renew your mind. There's no action here. This is all thinking correctly. So there's so much power in that and so much freedom that if you can think right, you can be right. And when you're being right, you do right. There's a lot of people who try to fix the doing and they never get around to the being. And that's why it's hollow Christian work if it's not really who you are.
Right. Well, that's super encouraging to me. Thank you.
You should be encouraged, bro, because you are doing an amazing job. Like, to be able to infiltrate this world, this TikTok insanity that I don't even fully get, and to be somebody who's bold about your faith, bro, I hope you're proud of yourself. Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
That's a demon.
Demon.
Well, not for nothing. What was the part of this conversation that was interrupted by that blower?
Like,
Yeah.
wow.
Straight encouragement to you. That's not by chance. I'll bet you there's a theme. So that's how you know, okay, there's an avenue of your heart that needs encouragement from heaven and from the right people. And if you get that right, you're going to be a problem. So even in this offhand moment, just we're taking 1 second just to put the spotlight on you and how great you're doing, and a random lawn blower invade your house and your dog has a spaz. Like, yeah, sometimes, I mean, I'm not super spooky, but I'm always looking around going, was that, no, I think that that is a failed attempt, and we're going to flip it and make it actually, that confirms part of your calling is to be encouraged and to encourage other people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dang. Thank you. That is encouraging. Thank you. This question means a lot to me that I'm about to ask, and we can close with this one. And I don't take dating advice from anyone that isn't married. I'm really encouraged by your marriage, and I just want to learn how to be a better boyfriend. I'm 21. I've been dating an amazing girl for almost a year. She challenges me, encourages me, helps me grow. How can I continue to lead her well? How can I be a better leader? Any advice across the board about dating? Because I feel like the Bible does it. It's like you're either single or married, and I'm like, this is like awful advice. Being like a young adult, like trying to navigate.
Yeah. No, I mean, there is a strain of thought that says basically if the Bible's not super clear on something, it's probably because there's ample evidence around it. So it's almost like the implication is like you should be able to date effectively if you're doing these 7 things that God's already pointed out. And yeah, it's confusing. So one suggestion or submission I would make to you is to maybe rethink, I can only take advice from a certain type of person, period. Just maybe kick that around a little bit, because the older you get, and this is funny, bro, about life, when you're younger, you do have particular people that you listen to. But the older you get, it's like, are you winning at all? Can I steal your idea? It's like that old adage where when you're younger, you see somebody that has the same outfit on. It's like, man, I hate that guy. But when you're older, you're like, hey, friends for life. What a great choice. You know, like that. What changed? It's your age. So I would say keep your mind open for any truth that impacts your life in a positive way. So if it's somebody who, because if you have like a gatekeeping mentality of like, if you're not married, I can't listen to you. Although I think it's super wise to listen to married people the most. I also find really high value sometimes in messages that come from messengers I might not get it. And sometimes that's more about me than them. So just as a principle in life, I like to maybe put a comma instead of a period there, because I mainly take advice from people who are married for these 7 reasons, but I'm so open and humble that, hey, if this freaking random dude over here in this alleyway in Van Nuys has one good thought, I'm so desperate to grow, I'll take it. So I think when it comes to dating, I'll give you the what I think is the most important advice for any young man. How much work are you spending? How much time are you spending on making yourself better? Because if you're healthy, your relationship will always reflect it. So sometimes we'll skip over ourselves again. I got to make my relationship better. I got to be a better boyfriend. Sure, maybe. And you tell me what kind of Bryce is a dangerous problem to have. The guy who is really secure, overflowing with joy, disciplined, filled with grace, and that guy walks out of his house. What kind of boyfriend would he be?
Probably the best boyfriend on the planet.
Of all time. Conversely, you wake up, brush your teeth, you take a shower, you go outside, you go buy flowers for her, and you go work on the 7 things that you're not great at, and you're trying to read her love languages, trying to make sure you understand her. And who's that guy? Well, okay, probably a good guy, but the first one sounds very appealing to me. So even with my daughters, when they're dating, I'm always having them check that guy's self-care routine. I don't care about the other stuff. I don't care about if he's being handsome. I don't care if he's funny. I don't care if he's cool. Is he open to therapy? Does he have someone he confides in? Is he vulnerable with his weaknesses? And although that can seem a little bit mature, I understand everybody's age is different, but I do believe the call that I see God doing is trying to get people to mature faster. So it's not shocking to me. I'm sitting across from a 21-year-old guy who has depth beyond your years. But I think with your girlfriend, anybody you're dating, first question to ask is am I helping myself? Because if I can't lead myself, how on earth am I going to try to help lead another person? So once you get that rhythm, then you can just, the overflow of who you are, it's going to make you a really compelling person to date. And if it doesn't go the distance, you walk away with two healthy people. That's how you know somebody was working on themselves. And when you see people have relational breakdowns and they're shattered for months after, it's typically because they've had sex, firstly, and they haven't understood the deep consequences of what that can mean physically. And then somebody wasn't healthy. So now the breakup was just hard. Like the most beautiful testament to a Christian relationship is when people have deep love, deep feelings. They don't decide to go on a future chapter together, but they both look at each other and say, you made me better. Yes, there was some heartbreak and I'm sad, but the impact you had on me was I became a better person. And I think if that's your goal as a boyfriend, you're either going to find the woman of your dreams and get married, or you're going to help somebody down the road that you don't know invest in this beautiful person that God did not entrust to you. That's a beautiful place to be. And I think, so I look at you and just go, man, for you to spend a lot of time watering your own soul, I think it makes relationships better. And there's some cool things you can do in a relationship, but the first foundational block is, how are you? Whoa. If you love yourself, very, very easy to love somebody else. But when I talk to young men that are very insecure and they hate themselves and they have hidden habits and I see them date, I'm like, what do you think you're going to produce for this girl? You don't even love yourself. You don't even know that God's forgiven you, but yet you're going to, they become controlling, mean, manipulative, abusive at times, domineering. And that's all a projection of who they are. So anytime, like I just tell my daughters, like, we just stay away from guys like that because we know right away they haven't got the memo. That how they treat themselves is how they're going to treat you. So if you see a guy who sleeps in all the time and he has no discipline and he's cool, but he doesn't go to class, okay, cool. What does that say about him? Don't make a judgment, just make an observation. And that's how you start to see who's who. And you see this other guy, he might not have the coolest outfit on, but he's early to every class. He's always kind of got that bouncy, weird joy. And he always does what he says. Man, I'll take my chances with the guy who doesn't have cool pants over the guy who looks so cool, but he's kind of not all there when it comes to the mental awareness lights. I think that's what I'm looking for. So you keep watering your soul, my brother, and you're going to be an unstoppable force.
Dang. Thank you. That's the best advice I'll probably receive from anyone across the board. Give me dating advice. That was super encouraging. Thanks for coming on.
It is my honor. It is my absolute honor. And I'm going to keep praying that God lights your way up, makes it so bright that you will never fear missing it, because that's what's in your future, bro. You're going to do things that even shock you. And I'll be able to say, yeah, I sat down on that guy's couch in Van Nuys. I knew him before you knew him. You're going to have that kind of life where people are going to want to be around you. But it's an honor, man. So keep doing what you're doing. And you got friends in Tulsa, Oklahoma, if you need them.
Thank you.
So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, guys. Go check out Carl's podcast, Lights On. It has been encouraging me. I've been listening to quite a few episodes, and I've been so encouraged. I mean, it's him and his wife, and they are just breaking down everything across the board, their life, inviting you into vulnerability. And I believe that being invited into like vulnerability is able to help transform other people's lives. So I've been super encouraged by Lights On. Guys, go watch Lights On. And January 19th, we've got our first live podcast here in Los Angeles. Go to jesusinthestreet.org/tickets and get your tickets. Love you guys. See you on the next episode.